Ladies and gentlemen, emotional strength is real power. It's the kind of power that doesn't need to shout to be heard or force its way through life. It's silent, steady, and deeply rooted within you. While the world often glorifies physical dominance or financial status as the ultimate form of strength, true power lies in how you manage yourself when everything around you feels like it's falling apart. Emotional strength means you don't panic in crisis. You don't let fear dictate your actions. You don't lash out just because you're hurt. You remain centered, calm, grounded. That doesn't mean you don't feel anything. It means you've learned to feel everything without being controlled by anything. This kind of power doesn't come overnight. It's built through pain, practice, and patience. It's the result of countless moments where you chose to pause instead of react, where you chose to reflect instead of blame, where you faced uncomfortable truths instead of distracting yourself with temporary escapes. Emotional strength means you can be kind without being weak, compassionate without being naive, and assertive without being cruel. You don't need to be the loudest in the room because your presence speaks for itself. You're not chasing drama, proving your worth, or begging to be seen. You already know who you are. People who are emotionally strong are dangerous in the best way. They are immune to manipulation. They don't fold under pressure. They don't act out of insecurity. Their strength lies in their ability to stay solid while the world tries to shake them. They can love deeply and still let go if they must. They can cry and still carry on. They can be vulnerable and still hold power. Emotional strength is the foundation of leadership, peace, self-respect, and lasting success. When you cultivate it, you no longer fear the storm. You become the storm's calm center. Reactions are easy. Control is powerful. It takes no effort to react. Someone insults you and your instinct is to fire back. Someone disrespects you and your reflex is to assert dominance. That's easy. That's natural. That's what most people do. But emotional power begins the moment you realize that reacting isn't the same as responding. Reacting is impulsive, emotional, often fueled by ego or fear. It's immediate and usually regrettable. Responding, on the other hand, is intentional. It's measured. It comes from a place of clarity, not chaos. The real power lies in choosing not to give in to the heat of the moment. It's in the deep breath you take before you speak. It's in the silence you allow before answering. It's in the decision to walk away rather than escalate. That kind of control over your words, your actions, your energy is rare. And because it's rare, it's powerful. When you're not easily provoked, you become unpredictable to those who try to manipulate you. When someone pushes your buttons and you don't respond the way they expect, you throw off their entire strategy. You take back control. You dictate the pace of the conversation. You hold the upper hand. Not because you dominate others, but because you dominate yourself. This kind of control doesn't mean you suppress your feelings. It means you respect them enough to not let them make decisions on your behalf. It means you've done the inner work to know that not every emotion deserves expression, and not every situation deserves a reaction. You stop handing your power to people who don't deserve it. You stop letting temporary emotions make permanent decisions. You don't let offense turn into outrage. You let annoyance turn into conflict. You move differently, speak differently, and live with a kind of presence that commands respect, not because you demand it, but because you embody it. The moment you stop reacting to everything is the moment you start choosing your energy, your peace, your direction. You're no longer at the mercy of external forces. You're no longer pulled into emotional whirlpools every time something goes wrong. You stand firm. You observe. You choose your moves wisely. And that is what makes you emotionally dangerous, not because you're violent, but because you're unshakable. Not because you suppress emotion, but because you master it. Self-awareness is your superpower. It's the ability to see yourself clearly, not just who you want to be, but who you truly are. It's about understanding your thoughts, your triggers, your patterns, your strengths and your weaknesses. Most people go through life pointing fingers outward, blaming others for their stress, their failures and their emotional chaos. But self-awareness flips that narrative. It forces you to look inward and ask the hard questions. Why did that bother me so much? What wound is that situation touching? Am I reacting out of truth or insecurity? When you become self-awareness, you stop living on autopilot. You stop moving through life blindly, repeating emotional habits that don't serve you. Self-awareness is not about judgment. It's about observation. It's the quiet strength of being able to sit with your emotions without needing to act on them. It's being able to say, I'm feeling angry, but I know why, instead of just exploding. It's being able to say, that comment made me feel small because I still have unhealed parts of me, instead of blaming the person who said it. This level of insight allows you to grow, to evolve, and to respond to life from a place of power rather than pain. The more you understand yourself, the less you're controlled by outside forces. You start to notice when you're being manipulated. You recognize when your ego is taking over. You become conscious of the stories you tell yourself and which ones need to change. With self-awareness, you can identify when you're self-sabotaging. You know when you're overthinking, avoiding, projecting, or shrinking to please others. And because you know, you can shift. You can choose a better response, a better habit, a better direction. Self-awareness gives you the clarity to course correct without shame. It gives you the strength to acknowledge your flaws without being defined by them. It keeps you grounded when your emotions try to pull you in all directions. It helps you stand in truth, even when it's uncomfortable. It lets you own your story, your healing, your growth. The people who lack self-awareness are easily controlled by others, by trends, by fear, by ego. But the ones who are deeply self-aware, they are untouchable in a different way. You can't gaslight them because they know themselves. You can't guilt them because they understand their own values. You can't trick them into overreacting because they see their own emotional landscape. They've done the inner work, and that inner work has made them steady, sharp, and powerful. That's why self-awareness isn't just a nice trait, it's a superpower. It makes you emotionally intelligent, mentally resilient, and spiritually dangerous to anything or anyone that tries to control you. Discomfort is your gym. It's the place where strength is built, where limits are tested, and where transformation begins. Most people avoid discomfort like it's the disease. They numb it with distractions, silence it with noise, and run from it at the first sign of pain. But those who want to grow, truly grow, learn to lean into discomfort. They don't just tolerate it, they train in it, because they understand that discomfort is not the enemy. It's the trainer, it's the process that refines you, humbles you, and prepares you for what life is trying to give you next. Growth never comes from the comfort zone. That's the place where dreams die quietly, where potential goes untouched, and where people settle for a version of life far beneath what they are capable of. Discomfort, on the other hand, demands more of you. It asks you to face fears, to break habits, to unlearn lies you've believed for years. It challenges your excuses. It forces you to confront your truth. When you're in discomfort, your mind will try to convince you to quit, to retreat to what's familiar. But the ones who are emotionally dangerous understand that the longer they stay in that discomfort, the stronger they become. It's in the uncomfortable conversations that healing starts. It's in the lonely nights that self-respect is built. It's in the rejection that resilience is born. Discomfort stretches you, tests your patience, and calls your character into question. But if you endure, if you train through it, you begin to realize that pain has a purpose. That not every season is meant to feel good. Some are meant to break you open so you can rebuild stronger. Discomfort sharpens your awareness, deepens your discipline, and reveals who you are when the masks fall away. The people who learn to operate in discomfort are dangerous, not because they're reckless, but because they're relentless. They don't need perfect conditions to perform. They don't fall apart when things don't go their way. They don't run from difficulty, they grow through it. They're battle-tested. They're emotionally conditioned. They've learned to breathe in chaos, to move with fear, to persist with pain. That kind of inner training builds a quiet, unshakable confidence. They know that comfort is not the goal, growth is. And growth, by its very nature, requires resistance. So while others are seeking ease, escape, and safety, the emotionally dangerous are in the gym of discomfort, lifting the weight of discipline, doing the reps of reflection, and building the muscle of emotional strength. Because they know the truth. If you never get uncomfortable, you never get better. Peace is your armor. In a world that constantly pulls you into chaos, confusion, and conflict, the ability to protect your inner peace is one of the most powerful things you can develop. It's not just a feeling, it's a weapon. Peace keeps your mind clear when others are losing theirs. It keeps your heart steady when situations try to rattle you. It becomes a shield against manipulation, anxiety, and emotional turbulence. When you have peace, you're no longer reacting to everything around you. You're grounded, you're anchored. You're untouchable in a way that unnerves people who feed off drama, control, and instability. Most people don't realize how valuable peace is until it's gone. They trade it for attention, for toxic relationships, for temporary validation, or for the need to prove a point. But those who become emotionally dangerous understand that nothing is worth their peace. Not the argument, not the misunderstanding, not the desire to be right, not the petty fight that leads nowhere. Peace doesn't mean you avoid conflict. It means you choose which battles are worth your energy. You start moving with intentionality. You walk away not because you're weak, but because you know your peace costs too much to be sacrificed over nonsense. When you carry peace inside you, you stop looking for it outside of you. You stop depending on other people's behavior to dictate your mood. You stop letting the opinions, projections, and chaos of others determine how you feel about yourself or your life. Peace becomes a personal responsibility, something you protect fiercely, not passively. And once you've tasted real peace, the kind that sits with you in silence, that calms you in pain, that strengthens you during uncertainty, you'll never again settle for anything that disrupts it. You'll cut ties faster, set boundaries quicker, say no more often. Because peace isn't just a vibe, it's your baseline for survival in a world that thrives on overstimulation and emotional noise. Peace gives you power in ways most people don't understand. It allows you to listen without reacting. It gives you the space to think clearly and make wise decisions. It helps you see situations for what they are, not what your emotions are trying to exaggerate. It keeps you from being pulled into every emotional wave that hits you. People who can't disturb your peace can't control you, and that's what makes you dangerous. You become immune to provocation. You become disinterested in drama. You become focused, calm, and calculated. That's not weakness. That's not indifference. That's strength. That's discipline. That's wisdom earned through experience. Peace is not passive. It's not about pretending everything's fine. It's about creating an environment, internally and externally, where you can thrive, where your mind is clear and your soul is not at war with itself. It's about not giving your power away just because someone else is in chaos. It's about realizing that peace isn't found in the absence of problems, but in the presence of perspective. And once you learn to wear peace as your armor, you start walking through life differently, quieter but stronger, softer but sharper, calm but completely unshakable. Boundaries make you powerful. They are not walls to keep people out, but gates to decide what comes in. They are expressions of self-respect, self-acknowledge, and emotional maturity. When you set a boundary, you're not being difficult or cold. You're making it clear that your time, your energy, and your peace are not up for negotiation. You're teaching the world how to treat you, and more importantly, you're showing yourself that your needs matter. Boundaries aren't about punishment. They're about protection. They protect your values, your space, your sanity, and your emotional well-being. The truth is, people who are used to you having no boundaries will always push back when you begin to set them. They'll guilt trip you, question your change, or accuse you of being selfish. But that's because they benefited from your silence, your people-pleasing, your emotional availability at all costs. When you finally draw a line, they feel the loss of access, and that loss will make them uncomfortable. But that discomfort is not your responsibility. It's a sign that the boundary is necessary. If everyone is happy with your boundaries, you're probably not setting them strongly enough. Boundaries are the difference between being emotionally drained and emotionally empowered. They help you say no without over-explaining. They allow you to walk away from toxic conversations, from manipulative behavior, from situations that don't align with your values. And most importantly, they allow you to say yes to yourself, to your growth, your healing, and your peace. You stop shrinking to fit other people's expectations. You stop sacrificing your well-being for their comfort. You stop bending over backward to earn love, attention, or validation. Instead, you stand firm, not in arrogance, but in self-assurance. It takes courage to set boundaries. It takes strength to hold them. You will be tested. People will push, some will leave, but the ones who truly respect you will adapt. They'll rise to the standard you've created. And in that process, you'll filter out the noise and attract relationships that are based on mutual respect, not emotional obligation. You'll begin to experience a level of peace and clarity that you didn't know was possible when you were constantly available, constantly giving, constantly saying yes, when you really meant no. Boundaries are not about closing yourself off from love. They are about creating the space where love can be real, safe, and respectful. When you have strong boundaries, you don't need to fear rejection because you've already chosen yourself. You don't fear being alone because you've learned to enjoy your own presence. You don't chase people or approval because you've realized that what truly belongs in your life will never require the abandonment of your values. In a world that often confuses kindness with self-sacrifice, setting boundaries is a radical act of strength. It's a declaration that you know who you are, what you need, and what you deserve. It's how you preserve your energy for the things that truly matter. It's how you keep your spirit from being exhausted by the expectations of others. And that quiet, consistent refusal to compromise your inner peace, that is power. That is emotional danger in its most disciplined form. You don't chase validation. When you become emotionally strong, you stop relying on the approval of others to define your worth. You no longer need someone to clap for you before you believe you've done something right. You don't base your self-esteem on likes, compliments, or applause. You don't wait for someone else to crown you before you stand tall. Because when you've done the work of knowing who you are, deeply, honestly and thoroughly, validation becomes a bonus, not a requirement. You learn to trust your own voice, to affirm your own value, and to walk in your own truth even when no one is watching or cheering. Validation is one of the most addictive forms of emotional dependency. It starts subtly, the need to be liked, to be acknowledged, to feel seen. But over time, if you're not careful, it becomes a prison. You start making choices not based on your values, but based on what will win approval. You silence yourself to keep others comfortable. You water down your personality to be accepted. You shrink your power so that others won't feel threatened. And before you know it, you're performing for acceptance rather than living from authenticity. But when you stop chasing validation, you take back your freedom. You begin to move differently. You don't need to announce your progress because you know it's real. You don't need to defend your boundaries, your decisions, or your growth to people who don't understand them, because you're no longer living for their understanding. You're living in alignment with yourself. And that kind of self-respect is intimidating to people who rely on external praise to feel good about themselves. Walking away from the need for validation doesn't mean you don't care about people or feedback. It means you've made peace with the fact that not everyone will approve of you. And that's okay. It means you've accepted that rejection is a part of life, not a reflection of your value. It means you understand that some people will misunderstand your intentions, misinterpret your silence, or resent your confidence. But instead of shrinking, you stay grounded. Instead of conforming, you stay true. You choose truth over popularity, substance over performance, alignment over acceptance. The less you chase validation, the more you attract authenticity, real relationships, real peace, real growth. You no longer waste energy trying to prove yourself. You don't need to outshine, outtalk, outperform anyone. You show up as you are, speak from the heart, and let your life speak for itself. You are no longer performing, you are living. You are no longer begging to be seen, you are standing in your own light. And that light doesn't flicker based on someone else's opinion. It doesn't dim when you doubt it. It doesn't need permission to shine because it comes from within. And once you've built that kind of inner foundation, you become emotionally dangerous in the best way. You cannot be manipulated by praise. You cannot be crushed by criticism. You cannot be swayed by noise. You've become rooted in something deeper than validation. You've become rooted in truth. You become immune to manipulation. When you are emotionally aware, grounded, and self-respecting, you stop falling for the subtle traps that once had power over you. Manipulation often thrives in the absence of clarity, when you don't fully know who you are, what you stand for, or what you're willing to tolerate. But once you develop that inner clarity, the games stop working. The guilt trips, the gaslighting, the emotional baiting, the flattery followed by control, they all start to lose their effect. Because when you see them clearly, you no longer respond blindly. You don't get pulled into emotional power plays, because you're no longer operating from a place of neediness, insecurity, or fear. Manipulators look for weakness, not strength. They search for your insecurities so they can exploit them. They test your boundaries so they can cross them. They flatter you so they can control you. But the emotionally dangerous person, the one who's done the work, who knows themselves, who doesn't need constant approval, is like a locked door to their efforts. You don't flinch when you are tested. You don't bend just because someone applies pressure. You don't chase after someone who withholds affection or creates confusion. You know the signs. You felt them before. And now, instead of reacting emotionally, you pause, you observe, you see the pattern for what it is, and you choose not to play the game. The reason manipulation works on so many people is because of emotional hunger. The hunger to be liked, the hunger to be needed, the hunger to belong. And manipulators feed that hunger with conditional love, mixed messages, and psychological tactics designed to keep you chasing their approval. You're not looking for someone to complete you. You're not desperate to be chosen. You've already chosen yourself. And in doing so, you create a shield against emotional traps. This doesn't mean you become cynical or closed off. It means you become discerning. You can still be open, but you're no longer naive. You can still care, but you're no longer easily convinced. You see through charm. You recognize guilt tripping as control. You call out passive aggressiveness for what it is. You don't stay silent to avoid conflict. You speak up calmly and firmly. And when someone tries to twist your words or question your reality, you don't get defensive. You stay grounded in the truth you know. You understand that not every attack requires a reaction. Some just require distance and silence. Becoming immune to manipulation is not about building walls, it's about building wisdom. It's about being so in tune with your values, your boundaries, and your emotional state that no one can drag you away from your truth. You stop giving people access to your buttons. You stop justifying yourself to those who distort everything you say. You simply see it, name it, and walk away. Not in anger, not in fear, but in calm, quiet strength. That kind of emotional immunity makes you powerful beyond measure. Because when someone can't control your emotions, they can't control your life. You become a storm they can't predict, a presence they can't manipulate. You no longer fear solitude. In fact, you begin to embrace it, not as isolation, but as sanctuary. Solitude becomes a space where you recharge, reconnect with yourself, and return to your center. Most people fear being alone because they haven't made peace with themselves. They constantly need someone to talk to, someone to validate them, someone to distract them from their own thoughts. They fill every moment with noise, people, and activity, not because they're fulfilled, but because they're running from silence. But the emotionally strong, the ones who are truly dangerous in the quietest way, have made solitude their strength. They've sat with their demons. They've faced the echoes of past pain. They've confronted their truth, not avoided it. And because of that, they're not afraid of being alone. They're empowered by it. When you become comfortable in your own presence, the need for external validation disappears. You stop seeking company just to avoid discomfort. You stop entertaining meaningless conversations, shallow friendships, and surface-level interactions just to fill space. You become intentional about who you allow into your world because you understand the value of your peace. You know that solitude is not empty. It's in solitude that you hear your intuition more clearly. It's in solitude that you reflect deeply, make better decisions, and strengthen your emotional independence. Solitude teaches you self-sufficiency. It teaches you to generate your own happiness, not outsource it to others. You learn to enjoy your own mind, your own company, your own rhythm. You realize that being alone doesn't mean being lonely. Loneliness comes from disconnection, from others, and from self. But solitude, when embraced with emotional strength, becomes connection in its purest form. Connection to your soul, your purpose, and your peace. It's where you strip away the masks. It's where you come home to yourself. People who fear solitude often compromise themselves in relationships. They stay too long, they settle too soon, they tolerate mistreatment because the fear of being alone feels worse than the pain of being disrespected. But once you no longer fear solitude, your standards rise. You don't beg to be chosen. You don't chase anyone. You don't force connections that don't align with your values. You're okay walking away, even if it means walking alone, because you trust that your peace is worth more than any connection that costs your dignity or your joy. And here's the quiet power in solitude. It makes your presence stronger when you do choose to engage. You no longer enter rooms needing energy. You bring it. You don't cling to others out of desperation. You connect out of overflow. Your relationships become pure because they're not built on need, but on mutual respect. You're not using people to escape yourself. You're choosing people who complement your already full life. That kind of independence is magnetic. It draws in people who respect you, not who want to use you. It protects you from codependency, emotional manipulation, and relationships that drain your spirit. Because you know you're whole on your own, and anything added to your life must match that wholeness, not diminish it. You become rooted, grounded, untouchable by the fear of being alone. And that unshakable comfort with solitude, that's where your power deepens. You master your emotional responses. You no longer allow your feelings to control you, you control them. That doesn't mean you suppress, ignore, or deny your emotions. It means you feel them fully, process them intelligently, and express them deliberately. Emotions are powerful, but without discipline, they can become destructive. When you react without thinking, when you lash out in anger, when you collapse under pressure, you give your power away. But when you learn to pause, to breathe, to assess what you're feeling before you act, you take your power back. You no longer live at the mercy of temporary emotions. You live guided by conscious decisions. Emotional mastery is not about being cold or robotic. It's about being wise. It's the understanding that not every situation deserves a reaction. Not every insult deserves a response. Not every moment of hurt requires retaliation. You choose your responses based on your values, not your impulses. You recognize that anger is natural, but it doesn't have to be explosive. That sadness is valid, but it doesn't have to paralyze you. That fear is real, but it doesn't get to decide your direction. You become the observer of your emotions, not the prisoner of them. You feel, but you do not fall apart. You express, but you do not self-destruct. Most people let emotions run their lives. They get triggered and spiral. They hear something they don't like and they explode. They feel offended and burn bridges. But when you've mastered your emotional responses, you become steady, unshaken by chaos, unmoved by provocation. You know how to stay calm in storms, how to listen through anger, how to hold space for pain without becoming consumed by it. That calmness makes you powerful. It's not that you don't feel deeply, it's that your depth doesn't control your direction. You've trained your emotions to serve you, not sabotage you. Emotional maturity is built in the moments when you want to react, but don't. When your ego is provoked, but you stay quiet. When your pride is challenged, but you respond with grace. It's in the pause between stimulus and reaction that your strength is formed. That split second where you decide who you are going to be. And the more you practice it, the more natural it becomes. You start to trust yourself more because you're no longer a slave to your emotional triggers. You can walk into any situation, tense, emotional, chaotic, and hold your ground with clarity and calmness. That doesn't just make you stable, it makes you powerful. People notice emotional mastery. They feel your energy shift. They see that you don't flinch under pressure, that you don't panic when others lose control. You lead by example, not because you're trying to impress anyone, but because you've disciplined yourself to act from wisdom instead of emotion. You don't burn bridges out of spite. You don't make rash decisions out of pain. You don't speak recklessly just to be heard. You've learned that your words are weapons, your actions have impact, and your energy affects everyone around you. This level of control makes you emotionally dangerous in the best way. You can't be baited into arguments. You can't be manipulated through guilt or fear. You don't fall for emotional games because you've outgrown emotional chaos. You lead yourself first, so no one else can lead you off course. And that kind of inner discipline is rare. It's not loud, it's not flashy, but it's deeply respected. Because in a world full of reactionary behavior and emotional volatility, your composure becomes a form of leadership. It commands presence, demands respect and creates space for real change, starting with yourself.